Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Action, our Power Rangers retrospect podcast. I am Chris Domenico here with Gabe Ribeiro, and we're going to be talking about season 2. We kind of needs to be its own podcast. I know our last one went on a little bit long, but what were some of the big changes? I mean, Power Rangers had a really, really successful season 1 to the point that they ordered more episodes.
It was so huge that they shut down the highway in LA because the original 6 cast members were at Universal Studios. That's how big it was.
Like when was that?
That was like spring of '94, leading into the next season.
Okay.
I remember reading an article about that and watching some interviews with past Rangers. But unfortunately, because we go into season 2, we're going to have some issues because with Sentai, unlike what they intended to do with the American footage, was every season is completely different, save for its basis elements. So, group of 5 fight an evil force. They summon some robots. They win the day. They help out some people in their town or village or what have them. Mm-hmm. But we're going to have to change that because we're going to have a recurring cast. And on top of that, we want to keep the Mighty Morphin brand, I guess, going further because as kids, we don't like change. So what did they do? They kept the suits, but we're going to adapt some footage from the Sentai after Zyuranger for Zords.
Season 2 is a Frankenstein of sorts because you have the new Die Ranger, right? Die Ranger footage.
Die Ranger is the Sentai after Zyuranger that they used for Zord fights.
Right, so we really only...
And certain monsters.
Well, probably the second half of the season, because the first half of the season, we're still using Zoo 2.
At least an early part of season 1. Season 2, yeah, because until we get to a story arc that involves a character. But, yeah, they commissioned all this footage that they didn't use at the end of season 1, so they incorporated that. But because they have new Zords, the Thunder Megazord, which some people love, some people hate. I'm kind of in the middle with it. If you really look at it, the individual Zords don't do much other than the Red Dragon.
They just go like this.
Yeah, they just kind of move up and down. And
right.
They show a lot of the same sequence of them moving until they just form the Megazord sequence.
Right.
But the Red Dragon fights on its own pretty well in that humanoid mode, which is cool.
Well, it's unfortunate because like the first Zord battle is with the Piranha's head,
which is Zoo 2 footage.
Zoo 2 footage, and
they incorporated Dragon Zord,
which is really cool because you have the original Megazord and Dragon Zord losing to this monster from Lord Zedd.
Right, they destroy some of the Zords and then they take control of Tyrannosaurus and the Dragon Zord.
Yeah, because he freezes them and takes control of some of them, and that's really cool. But then anytime we see a Zord battle after that, I think for the first half of the season, we're not seeing any contact. We're just
unless the Dragon Zord is fighting the monster, you're seeing them they show the sequence of which they show it this is how they really... This is like... Season 2, I hate being this guy, but if you're going to be rewatching, I know it brings back a lot of feelings for some people, nostalgia, but boy, do they pad these episodes, not only with morphing, but the Mastodon, Lion, Thunder Zord power, etc. And that same sequence of them forming the Megazord. Yeah, I know they do the same thing with them in the cockpits and the crystals in the first season, but like it just seems like it's so much more.
It's a lot of energy to exert, just waving your arms around.
Just doing this same pose, which is a Zyuranger pose when they all formed with the Green Ranger. By the way,
I believe that was the last episode of the Green Ranger miniseries, right?
Yeah, where they do that thing and they do their like specific poses.
It's like they're like doing stretches,
Yeah.
Prior to going into Zord.
We end up having the Thunder Megazord not in the same shots as the Zyuranger monsters, so we show them forming it. They show them fighting. The monster will throw an attack. You'll see the Thunder Megazord maybe do something, but then they'll do the Thunder Megazord's final thing with that samurai katana thing, and it just slashes it and the monster dies, but you never see contact.
See, you could argue that the Thunder Megazord is more effective than the original Megazord because...
In terms of plot convenience, sure.
Because it just... I mean, that's the sort of do et machina, right? I mean, they finished the job so much quicker.
But it's so disappointing when you look back at it as an adult. I guess they just wanted to save money. And they cut costs a lot with this season, which is something that really, unfortunately, is something that ends up having to be something that they have to incorporate into their plot. But
right.
from
So let's talk about Lord Zedd.
Lord Zedd.
He's a huge
Lord Zedd
addition.
Well, they didn't adapt the Die Ranger villains.
We do see the Die Ranger villain later in the season.
The main villain as like one that I think they have in the finale in an episode later on that's very heavily padded in its own right.
He plays Mondo the Magician.
Not King Mondo. That's
not King Mondo.
That's a different.
But he's like a one-off.
But Lord Zedd, Funko Pop, albeit great, does not do it justice because his suit alone is amazing, and the voice actor they have for him, which is also Finster, Rita's monster maker and the guy who gets the putties going, is just awesome. He looks like he should be one of Satan's like lackeys.
Right. Basically.
Like he's got like exposed muscle and fluid and tubes and stuff in him and this awesome staff and the Z and he's just bright red and he's awesome.
I mean, when you meet the guy, he's like holding a snake. You know?
And he's easily intimidates Rita. He takes over in the first episode. Yeah. And from there, like even parents were complaining that he was too scary, he is. He's
scary. And I think it's great because the first season establishes Rita as such a great villain, and to have just somebody just swoop in and just put her out of commission, I think was a really, really great way to introduce Lord Zedd. And
especially if they wanted to go, they only wanted bases, Sentai elements, I guess, which is why they didn't incorporate the suits, which is another problem that we have, where you'll see the monster in one shot, then you'll see the Rangers doing their American footage with fight. They'll fight the putties, Zedd's putties, which have like a weird Z that...
right? I never get that because it's.
I guess they really have to hit it super hard because otherwise, if you tap it, it doesn't.
No, because
they disintegrate.
You saw Tommy at least once or one of them taps it and they just disintegrate.
I don't know. There's a weird trigger to those things. They just explode or go off into the ether or some crap.
But I think in some ways they're easier than Rita's putties. I mean, Rita's putties could really take a beating. Maybe, and every time Zedd's putties show up, it's a song and dance number.
Yeah, oh my god, especially when we get to near the end of the season. They're doing like the wave and crap on like a jungle gym. And there's one where they like cheat their butts out and look like they're twerking. I'm like, what is going on?
I'm waiting for them to like pull out a hat and a cane and start
acting
like
Zedd's putties became dancers near the end of the season.
Warner Brothers Frog, hello my baby, hello my honey.
Yeah, Michigan J Frog, yeah. But Zedd in his own right is just so evil.
He's a great villain.
But it ends up that he sends down a monster that obviously is going to be Sentai footage, but Zoo Ranger being a different Sentai and they don't carry over with every year. They don't have the same recurring cast. You've got American footage of them probably fighting the Goldar and the Putties. Unless they get the Monster Suit of the Week, they are, let's say they're throwing a weapon and then the next shot you see the monster get hit, but you never see contact.
And you see like sparks and stuff.
Or let's say this. The monster is in a completely different geographical landscape. Because I swear, there's it's overcast and it's the woods in Japan, and we're in like a bright sunny park in California. Yeah. I'm like, this isn't even close. Yeah. I even swear one of the monsters was in front of the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah. There's moments where it's clearly Japan, and
as a little kid you buy it, but man, you really see through it. Like they just took a lot of shortcuts.
I as a kid, I mean, this is 1994 at this point.
94 going into 95.
95. I'm 9 or 10 years old. I'm like, something's off about this, but I couldn't quite.
And then we even found shots where they clearly substituted the Thunder Megazord into the fight with the Zoo Ranger monster. Finally, after they exhausted some of that footage, they finally have Thunder Megazord fights. But even some of them are kind of sloppy and lazy. They just essentially... They do like a punch or two, then he gets the saber, boom.
Well, I think even the Red Dragon...
the Red Dragon had a couple fights on his own that was kind of cool.
When he's like that humanoid type robot, he has some really cool fights, especially when he rides the White Tiger Zord.
White Tiger Zord,
and he's swinging a stick around. I mean, those are pretty cool.
And when they have stuff with like the White Tiger Megazord and Tor. Which is like a shuttle Zord that's a giant turtle that just essentially just protects him. He's only in 4 or 5 episodes.
He just cracks me up. He just
but his leg, he just goes like this, and his feet flail around. But then he stands upright, and he looks like this big thing that's just going to kick your ass. But all he really does is act like a shield.
And he can take a beating though. I mean, look at he takes down Serpentera.
Well, he withstands Serpentera.
Yeah. Well,
Serpentera being Lord Zedd's Zord that just magically. So apparently, like Zedd never has fuel for this Zord, but it's a Zord from the Sentai who isn't specifically a villain, but is like this neutral thing that can destroy planets when it feels like. It's kind of like a really nice like neutral Galactus essentially, or Thanos if you will. But this thing's like the size of a planet, and even in his introduction, he's got this footage of him just destroying this planet.
And I think in the Sentai, it's Tokyo, isn't it?
It's Tokyo, yeah.
But in Power Rangers, it's another planet.
Yeah, we can't really have death on a kid's show.
Right. But really cool Zord, and I think that was one of the best parts of Lord Zedd was Serpentera.
Yeah, especially there's some shots of him. There's one episode in particular, like the episode cuts away where Zedd's like cheering while Serpentera is blowing up this planet, and there's like really good lighting, and Zedd looks super menacing. I'm like, that's pretty dark for kids. But of course, because parents complain, they have to mellow Zedd out near the end of the season. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because we have to talk about the Rangers.
Well, let's talk about Rita and Zedd. So Rita makes a return.
Rita makes a couple returns. One episode in particular where she just shows up and Bulk and Skull find her. And she wants to let herself out, but she's really small and she's kind of like ruining it. Bulk and Skull are going to try to open the dumpster to let her out, but
which, by the way, it's really I think it's clever when they bring her back.
It's a testament to how much Rita made an impact amongst the kids.
Right. Well, I think the fans really wanted her back.
Yeah.
Such an iconic voice. And what's interesting is the way that they don't have any new footage with the Rita actress.
Yeah, they recycled a bunch of footage, and then they're saying, all right, we want to bring her back. Parents are complaining that Zedd's too scary for their children. So let's have Rita marry Zedd. But she comes back, and Finster makes her like a potion that gives her a makeover. So
what's interesting is when they bring Rita back. So like when Lord Zedd gets rid of her the first time, they intersplice Zoolander footage with just like shots of the side of Rita. Like you can tell they're trying not to show her face. Even when she's small, like they do little things to hide.
They throw in a couple. They can throw in a little bit of footage, and then of the Sentai, and then they just like it's her from behind with the voice, or her in a costume with like a silhouette or some crap.
Right. Which they really started. They figured out how to just show silhouettes of people and pretend that they're there. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But I really like the teaming of Rita and Zedd. I mean, I think it made him a little bit less scary.
They made Zedd like kind of like a dad, like just like a cheesy dad with silly one-liners. Like you know how Zedd became Lord of the Dad jokes after that, but he still has a maniacal appearance. And we're not going to get ahead of ourselves because this is something we'll talk about later. But some of the plans that happened when Rita and Zedd actually joined together, they were perfect together because they do a lot of damage to the Rangers in later incarnations.
There's different plots at work here. So you have Zedd's trying to take over the world. He's trying to destroy the Power Rangers. But then you have Rita's trying to like work her way back and take control again. And I think having those multiple dynamics going on was pretty interesting in the show.
And I love how Goldar seems to change on a whim too, because he seemed like he was a loyal servant to Rita. But then when Zedd shows up, he grovels to him. But then when Rita wants to marry Zedd, he's completely against it.
Goldar is the biggest kiss ass ever.
But he's great.
He's great, but oh my gosh, come on.
Yeah, especially in that season.
Yeah. He gets his wings back.
Yeah.
There's a weird episode where they bring back Scorpina.
Yeah, and they clearly recycle. I guess they got lazy for an episode because they clearly recycle a Zoolander fight with Scorpina and Goldar in a Zord footage, and like the aforementioned stories that we mentioned, there's clearly them just trying to shoot the Thunder Megazord with crap, and you only see the Thunder Megazord doing this, walking and taking it like a boss, or taking damage from a different shot. And then you don't see the impact. I swear there's a shot of them taking the saber and hitting them with it, and it's clearly the Megazord's power sword.
Right.
So they got lazy for an episode. They're just like, all right, we brought Scorpina back for an episode, but it's not the actress from the Sentai. It's just someone we cast. And let's just have them fight them again, and nobody will notice.
Yeah, I think there was a lot they could do with that, but it was so obvious that it was the Zoolander Goldar costume, and it's kind of lame. But there's still a lot to like about the season.
There's a lot to like, but like those Zord fights really leave a lot to be desired. Like Zedd's monsters are getting beat in 2 minutes because of the disconnect of lack of footage. Yeah. And even when they do have the Thunder Megazords, there's so few fights that were like, man, we're just seeing the same thing over and over. They pulled the Thunder Saber out and boom, and that's it.
Yeah, I was saying
that's one of the biggest downsides to this season.
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest downside was that. Let's talk about something positive with this season. Was Bulk and Skull.
Bulk and Skull have huge character development in this season. For some reason, they don't like the teens, but they have so much love for the Power Rangers, which is the irony.
Which is great. Yeah, it's great irony.
And they slowly but surely become just really like endearing characters because, well, for one thing, like they're not in they're in it for the wrong reasons, obviously, but they're not like malicious about it. But they get screwed over by the Rangers. They get really close a few times with some of their plans. Like there's one with footprints. There's one with a videotape where the Rangers are morphing in the park or something.
Right.
And the Rangers switch out the tape, or like they break the cement block with their feet. But like, I think you and I want to talk about the one episode where.
Well, first of all, I want to say that they are so creative with some of the schemes they come up with, and some of them are pretty good.
Some of them were just downright stupid. They didn't make any sense to me. I was like, are they using a metal detector or something? What are they? Right. A divining rod or something?
He just has the stick. And
and I was like, what is it? And then there's ones where they try to duplicate looking like the putties, and they look nothing like the putties. But I mean, it shows that they're trying, I guess.
But there's an episode, I believe it's
one of the best Bulk and Skull moments.
A prism monster, right?
It's like a kaleidoscope monster.
Yeah.
And they decide that the prisms, like somehow the prism is like the MacGuffin of the episode where it restores memory because the kaleidoscope monster is like erasing memory of citizens.
Well, and the Rangers especially, they don't know who they are.
Yeah, the Rangers lose their memories, and who steps in?
And then Bulk and Skull show up, and then they
because they're on a stakeout, but they're in like Wild West outfits, and they're about to stand off against the monster, and it's just
and I love that they realize who the Rangers are, and they're like, "You're not touching the Power Rangers if we have anything to say about it." Right. And it's such a great moment.
I dare say it might be the second best moment of Bulk and Skull.
Yeah. I'd say second best.
I know a lot of. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's one way down the road.
We have there's a really nice moment where the Rangers thank him.
Thank them. They even say that, like, didn't they say like the Power Rangers thought they were cool or something?
They're like, I'm sure they really appreciated it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like they start, and I think we see it more in season 3, which we'll get into once you start watching that. But we start to see they kind of become frenemies.
Yeah.
If you will. And I like that because Bulk and Skull are,
They last longer than any of the Rangers on the show. They're on the show for like 300 episodes.
But you root for them a
little
bit.
They do.
Like you kind of.
Because they're like lovable losers.
Yeah. And sometimes like they even seem like they're being bullied.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't even forget. We totally forgot another sequence. They took care of the baby.
Right. They take care of the baby.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So the Rangers. There's a ninja tournament, and a guy who's like, I guess the teacher.
He's the teacher at the other school.
Yeah. He has a newborn son. He gets abducted by Zedd, and Bulk and Skull take care of his son the whole time. They're even trying to like change the baby's diaper, and they take care of him for a while. Like
they're not great.
It's a really padded. It's a 3-parter, right?
I think it's a 3-parter.
It's a 3-parter. It's really padded, but Bulk and Skull really make the episode with that.
They do, yeah. So the biggest change, I think, aside from Lord Zedd in this, is that we see the departure of 3 of the original.
3 classic Rangers that I know a lot of people who are fans of the first season really love are.
And it's kind of weird because like
Jason, Zach, and Trini.
Jason, Zach, and Trini, and it's kind of weird because
we knew a movie was on the horizon. Well, I think they even knew too.
Well, we know it's coming because we remember. But you start to notice in the show that I believe it's the voiceovers change first. So when the Rangers are in the suits, their voices are different, even though the live action actors are
the actors were getting paid pretty poorly.
Yeah.
They were having like crazy mad days. You can read up on this. Austin St. John has a good, Jason has a good like story about how he was making pretty much the same as somebody who would work at McDonald's on the most popular kids show in America. Mm-hmm. And he's working like 12 to 18 hour days where they're doing fight scenes, just acting scenes, and then they're dubbing their dialogue of the in-suit stuff.
Well, terrible working conditions.
Yeah, and then I think they said at one point they agreed to stop doing the dubbing because they wanted a union because of the hellish hours and stuff like that.
Well, no, I think it was. And by the way, I want to say that I think they had every right to do what they did.
Yeah.
It was sad to see them go, but I mean, no one deserves to be treated that way.
No.
But I think what happened was I think they always did the dubbing later.
Right. And so they said they weren't going to come back for the dubbing, right?
Right. Well, no, I think so. They did the live action sequences. They shot that already. They would later go for in general.
Right.
In general, they would go back and record the voiceover.
Right. So we got to a point where they were still showing up in live action, but they weren't showing up for the dubbing or in the episode at least. Because there's some really bad dubbers in these episodes. One of which is actually a character who plays Zach's cousin. Right. Who actually dubs over Zach later.
I think he's the most convincing one.
Yeah, he is.
And then
Jason, Trini is bad, and then Jason is a guy who's just like, give me the power coins, guys.
Yes, like some guy from Brooklyn.
I don't know what that is.
But the Trini one sounds nothing like her at all.
No, that sounds nothing like her.
And so eventually, and we know it's coming.
But we're segueing in this story-wise. Before all this is going down, Tommy only has a limited amount of time left with his Green Ranger powers. And Zedd devises this scheme where he steals his powers and it charges this crystal that's going to fuel his Dark Rangers. Remember that?
Yeah.
Those really god-awful costumes. I don't know. The idea is so cool to have, like, evil Power Rangers, and the execution is awful. Well, and they get these really crappy suits for these stupid teens that are, like, I guess from the rival school, and they put them in these god-awful jumpsuits with they just look awful. It's like they blew the costume budget or something.
And that's another... Yeah, I think they didn't actually do any action sequences because the costumes wouldn't last.
Yeah, they were god-awful.
But it was another... I mentioned in the last podcast that, afterwards they befriend these evil Rangers. Like, oh, I guess we got off on the wrong foot, and we never see them again. Never see them again. I mean, it's...
So, in the midst of doing that, Tommy's gone again for a few episodes, but in the meantime, they're building up to these... Oh, no. I'm getting ahead of myself. Because the Rangers are in an issue because one of Zedd's monsters can split into three and it's beaten up on the Megazord. So they didn't realize that Alpha and Zordon were making a Ranger behind their back. And it ends up being the White Ranger. Right. But they do these like subtle hints that you think it might be other people because they introduce Zach's cousin Curtis, that character I mentioned earlier who shows up for a couple episodes, but he's mostly there to dub over Zach later.
Yeah, they have.
And then they have this kid, Richie, who's just this pretty boy who Trini pines over and does nothing but work at the juice bar and smile. He really does nothing. And I don't remember him having that much dialogue.
Well, I think it was like the red herring of the week.
Yeah, he was the red herring. So the White Ranger shows up in one of the most classic moments of the series, to be honest. Yeah. He shows up in the command center, and he takes his mask off, and it's Tommy.
Right.
So he joins the team.
Kimberly faints.
And then he kind of just becomes the leader, and we have to accept that even though Jason's been our leader. And then we find out in the next couple episodes they're slowly but surely bringing in these new characters who are out-of-towners, which are Adam, Aisha, and Rocky, and who just happen to wear the same colors.
Right, yeah, that's how you know you're going to be a Power Ranger.
It's like, man, I'm glad I own this many yellow shirts.
I think if you just wear a color long enough, you just kind of hope that you'll get chosen by Zordon to be a Ranger.
Yeah.
By
the way, that does not look like Aisha. I'm sorry. That doesn't look like Billy either.
No, these are the movie ones. I don't think this looks like Billy. I've met Billy.
Yeah, Billy, that looks nothing like Billy. He's way too blonde.
Billy's got brown hair.
Yeah.
But,
it's like a sandy blonde.
Yeah. But anyway, what's interesting...
They transition them into being the new Rangers.
Well, the transition's interesting because they're still showing... The original actors are clearly left, but they have stand-ins.
They use some stock footage. They use voiceovers for the Ranger fights.
Yeah.
And they use body doubles with their back turned.
Yeah, and it's clever.
Clever for kids, but you really pick up on it as an adult. I'm like,
I didn't notice the body doubles as a kid, but the voices I noticed.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is it? There's a moment where Trini says, we can't go now.
Yeah, because that's an old line, and then it's like, Zord on the Peeps Conference. And I'm like, that is not even close.
Nobody we know. And then she says there has to be another way.
Something like that.
But it's just two very different voices. And I remember that as a kid. I'm like, why? That sounds kind of weird.
It's funny, though, because in the midst... So the whole plot conceit is the rest of the Rangers are going to, teleport to a new planet, which they never established. I'm like, wow, they can just teleport to planets?
They got like extra extra Zordon power.
Zordon gave them more power from the morphing grid.
A wizard did it.
Yeah, a wizard did it. So they go to this planet where they need this sword to transfer the powers, and that's where we see Serpentera in all of its glory. Because the Rangers get the sword in like the last second after then they get out of there and that planet is demolished by Serpentera. That thing is like one of the coolest things in Power Rangers history.
Oh yeah.
But when they transfer over to the new Rangers, they have an issue now because they really don't give them much in terms of character. Like, Adam's a guy who knows martial arts and is shy with girls. Rocky's kind of like generic guy, and then he ends up wanting to have fun with a pachinko machine. If anybody remembers that episode, where Rocky just wants to play pachinko, and then when he morphs, he runs around dancing around the other Rangers.
It was a great episode for kids that have gambling problems.
And I'll tell you what, they got the monster suit from Japan.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times they did that.
Yeah. I think they did a good job introducing the three.
Yeah, I mean, they filled their roles, but they didn't really have much in terms of who they were. I mean, honestly, I can't even tell you what Rocky's character is about, aside from he's a guy who knows martial arts and likes pachinko. At least some of the other characters lasted a little longer. I mean, Aisha was pretty simple. Like, she was a girl, and she liked them all, like Kimberly, and they were friends.
Yeah, they didn't really develop the characters too much. But Aisha had a great storyline where she was really paranoid about the fire safety, and I disagree. I think they did some good stuff with the new characters. I thought
they did what they could, but there was there was growing pains because we had just lost some Rangers that we had sat through for 80 episodes.
Yeah, but I thought these three really, they had very big shoes to fill, and I thought they filled them adequately.
No, I think they did too.
The
unfortunate thing was, once we ushered in the new Rangers, then they started filming the movie. So then we had some two-parters where the Rangers showed up for 5 minutes, and it was clearly Australia where they were shooting the movie, and then the rest of the episode was them in the Ranger suits.
We had a point where there was a lot of two-parters.
Yeah, there was the rest, near the end of the season is a lot of multi-parters.
And they took the show in an interesting direction because they were going to different time periods.
They went to a storybook.
They went to storybook. They went to
the Wild West.
Wild West, colonial times.
They went to Australia. They went to Australia.
Yeah, with the wedding.
Because then they transferred them back to some random theater, which was probably in Australia, where the Rangers... Right. Or they just filmed that in America, where the Rangers fought a bunch of monsters in suits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we got to a Thunder Megazord fight near the end. Oh, no. That's what it was. We got a Thunder Megazord fight, but then we're doing a fight. I'm like, cool. They're going to fight multiple monsters from Rita and Zedd. And it's all stock footage.
Yeah.
It's all stock footage. That's the problem that we had near the end of the season. Then we got, I have mixed feelings about it's a 3-parter, isn't it? Return of the Green Ranger?
Yes.
It's a 3-parter. So Tommy comes back as the Green Ranger and fights the White Ranger. That stuff's cool. The Rangers are sent to colonial times, and it's just...
They fight some rats.
They fight some rats, and the rest of the side actors aren't that good, and it's just not convincing. It's not good. The subplot of Tommy fighting himself is cool, but everything else is really silly. I like Bulk and Skull's ancestors. That was cool.
They could have done more, I think, with those, but at the same time, you could tell the actors are having fun doing something different, and I give them a lot of credit for trying something different.
I want to point out something interesting as I think it pertains to Power Rangers canon, because even though there's multiple series that go forward, Mighty Morphin's the main one where the cast keeps going and they keep the same suits. But there's something, I think deep down every series is kind of canon, especially when they go forward with some later seasons of certain characters coming back. But it's the one where they go to the Old West, and the ancestors of the Rangers just happen to look like them, even though some of them aren't even from Angel Grove. That might just be a coincidence, but still, they're the original ones that have the power coins?
They borrow them.
They borrow them.
That's the idea.
Okay, because the power coins have a weird They have like a weird folklore to them too, because
Right.
we'll get into the next season. Spoiler alert: Zordon and Alpha did not create them.
Who created them?
The Fat Power Ranger, as your stepdad used to call him. We're not gonna spoil him just yet. He's in
So
season 3.
he created
He created the power coins.
the original and the ninja ones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for some reason, Zordon and Alpha have the power coins in the 1800s, and
Yeah, and the command center's still standing. So I guess there was Rangers all the way back, and maybe not even. Honestly,
No,
the
I
Mighty
don't-
Morphin team might not have even been the first ones on Earth, based on what we see of later Zords and later powers.
well, no, because Rita was still trapped. I think she was the first
But
threat.
what was Zedd doing the whole time?
He was conquering other galaxies. You know.
Okay, I mean
Yeah.
there could have been other villains, other Rangers. We don't.
But
know.
it
But that's
seemed-
what I think.
It seemed like they borrowed it and then they gave it back. They didn't keep it.
No, yeah.
But that was a cool sequence.
Yeah. But then unfortunately the season ends on a weird, just random episode that should have just been earlier in the season.
It's where Billy has like an evil twin.
Billy's evil for like the 15th time. And Bulk and Skull make a statue out of him in like a sculpture class, like their shop class. Because Billy has like love interest number 10,
Right.
who we never see again. And he's just evil. And man, when he does that morphing thing and there's like that body double next to Billy, like David Yost is probably in his 20s here and that guy's probably in his 40s. It's not even close.
Yeah.
It was
But
just,
but again, it gets.
but I guess I think it's the way that they knew, like the movie's on its way and then we're going to start another season, so they don't really care how they leave off the
But
season.
you know what? What that episode is interesting because I think that's the first time they all start getting wise to, hey, you know what?
Is that the episode where
May-
there's like, maybe it's Zedd?
No, that's an earlier one, but this is another one where remember when evil Billy asked for the communicators,
Yeah.
and Tommy's like, I'm gonna hold on to mine. Like he's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
suspicious and like
Yeah.
they're catching on, like something's up.
The Rangers are surprisingly dumb. They really are.
I think they got smarter.
Yeah,
as
it
time
took
went
them a
on.
while after like Billy went evil like 10 times and Kimberly went evil a few times.
Yeah, they all went.
But we
evil
get
a
some
couple
great
times.
Bulk and Skull stuff this season,
Mhm.
man. They really do. Just
Yeah.
they might be the highlight of season 2. That and Zedd. Like it's just a shame because those Megazord fights are garbage for
Yeah.
the most part.
Great season. I think aside from the Zord fights were really kind of a bummer,
Yeah.
but I think they did
I
a
mean,
lot.
yeah, as kids, we had to change. We had to adjust to a lot of change.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk about Tommy, which, as the White Ranger, really came into his own. A lot of people were really popular with him. I like the White Tiger Zord. I don't think it's nearly as cool as the Dragon Zord,
It was pretty cool though.
but like it was cool enough, and it had its own thing. Here's a little trivia fact for you guys. For those of you who are fans of Power Rangers Turbo, who hate the idea of the Blue Ranger being a kid, the White Ranger is actually a kid in the Japanese version. You can see if you see the Japanese footage, he's jumping up and down after like he gets Saba like a little kid. He's actually like a 12-year-old. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yep. Yeah. So I like season 2. I like that they tried different things. I thought it was.
They did they did what they could given the circumstances of money, changing Sentai footage, and what have you,
and doing a movie at the same time.
and having to shoot
know.
a movie.
Some of those 2 or 3 parters I don't think had to be 2 or 3 parters.
No, the season was heavily padded. There's a lot of episodes with morphing. They probably morph at least twice an episode sometimes, and they're doing the Mastodon, Lion, Thunderzord power, Pterodactyl, Firebird, Thunderzord power. Like they do that every episode.
One of my favorite moments though is when Bulk and Skull actually create a monster. Which
Yes,
is
I
great.
totally forgot about. Is that the same one?
I think that's the storybook one.
That's
I think.
I thought it was the one where they're trapped in the theater in Angel Grove. That's the monster they fight.
And the what?
Remember when they're in Australia?
Mhm.
No, maybe it's not that one.
I think it's a storybook
Because Bulk
one.
and Skull are in Australia with them.
Because they have to get a book. They get a cookbook. They get a book about making monsters, and
Yeah.
they get a book about making a turkey.
Yes,
And then
it's a
they mix
giant
it up.
Yes,
Which is just great. I mean, it just was hilarious.
it should have been a Thanksgiving episode.
It really should. Yeah. So that's season 2.
Stay tuned for season 3.
We're gonna watch the movie next, so we'll do a podcast on the movie.
I saw it in theaters when I was a kid. I was very excited about it. I watched it again about 10 or so years later. I haven't seen it in about 15 years. We're going to be in for something because I remember a good amount of it, but I'm pretty sure a lot of it's pretty silly and ridiculous, as per Power Rangers tradition.
I don't think I've seen it in 20 years, but it'll be interesting to check that out as it's.
Also, something in Power Rangers Season 2 that we're omitting, if anybody wants to take a chance at it. It has a very special place in this guy's heart. Alpha's Magical Christmas, a VHS special for a Christmas episode where he sings Christmas carols with the Rangers and little kids.
We'll talk about it another time.
Yes.
For Dork Daily, I'm Chris Domenico.
And I'm Gabe Ribeiro.
We'll see you next time.
May the power protect you.
Back to action.